The Fed15 podcast is presented by Serving Those Who Serve, a fiduciary, fee-based financial planning firm serving federal government employees and retirees all over the country. This podcast is for informational purposes only and is not intended to be taken as financial advice. All listeners should consult their personal advisors before taking any action. The opinions expressed by our host are their own and do not reflect the views, policies, or position of Raymond James. Securities are offered through Raymond James Financial Services, Inc., member FINRA SIPC. Investment advisory services are offered through Raymond James Financial Services Advisors, Inc. Serving Those Who Serve is not a registered broker-dealer and is independent of Raymond James Financial Services, Inc. And now, here are your hosts. Dan Sipe serves as a branch manager for Raymond James Financial Services and Serving Those Who Serve, and Katelyn Murray is a financial advisor through Raymond James Financial Services and Director of Advisory Services here at Serving Those Who Serve.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to this week's episode of the Fed15 podcast presented by Serving Those Who Serve. Each week, we'll discuss the latest news and info that Feds need to know in 15 minutes or less. So whether you are a seasoned federal employee or whether you're just starting out in your career as a Fed, Fed15 has got you covered. So grab your coffee, grab your water to hydrate. If you're like me and you need to hydrate, kick back, and we'll tell you what you need to know but might have missed this week. We are your hosts. I'm Katelyn Murray, and I am joined by the salmon-clad or hot pink Mr. Dan Sipe today, in a good mood.
Yes, I'm in the pink because no government shutdown. Thank you to the House and the Senate and President for just getting that done. Maybe a little earlier next time around, but I'm not going to complain. So that's one thing off the table. Hopefully I won't have to pull the black T-shirt out, again this year. But I'm sure there's something that will rankle me where Feds aren't being taken care of. So I can't promise that won't come back out.
Yeah, I'm not loving the Netflix episodic TV show level of anticipation that often is surrounding.
It's a bad binge watch.
Yeah,
I mean, it's not enjoying it. Would rather go back and re-binge Got, or Cobra Kai, something.
Yes, yeah. Leave the cliffhangers to Netflix, right?
Exactly. So we got a bunch to talk about today.
We do. It's a meaty episode, folks.
Yep. We've got 5 points to consider, and it's as you approach retirement. I'm going to say start thinking about these things even earlier, and then Katelyn, you're going to cover eligibility for FEHB, which, as everybody knows, if you've listened to me, if you happen to have done a part 2 with me, after the pension, health insurance. Pension's 1, health insurance is 1A as far as the benefits that you have. So understanding.
I don't know, Dan. I might even challenge you on that because when we look at financial plans for folks, healthcare costs are inflated at 6% and
Agreed.
Regular spending's only inflated at 3%. So I think FEHB could vie for the number 1 spot. But that's just me.
From a standpoint, I would agree with you from a standpoint of intentionality, so that you've got to have a plan for those inevitable increases.
Yeah.
And invariably, I think people miss the importance of TSP in that equation.
Yeah.
Because if you're a FERS employee, you've got a defined benefit pension that's going to have a cost of living adjustment. You're going to have Social Security, which is essentially annuity with a cost of living adjustment. But cost of living adjustment does not necessarily mean ahead of inflation or even with inflation.
Yeah.
And then as you correctly identify, healthcare inflation is much higher than the general rate. That's where getting those market rates of return are going to be really important. So let's jump into some of the articles that we're covering. And again, folks, you can find all of these in print on our website, STWS.com. So top 5 points to consider. Up first, picking your retirement date. If your FERS, end of the month. If your CSRS, last day of the month, first 3 days of the new month. same thing. But then we generally lean towards end of the year, 12/30, 12/31, whatever way it falls with weekends and that type of thing, because you're maximizing your annual leave for that. Then otherwise, end of a pay period, as I mentioned, end of a month. The problem with picking something, if you're first picking something other than the end of the month, is you're going to have a longer gap before your pension check starts, after your paycheck stops. OPM backlog surges towards the end of the year, so keep that in mind. Get your packets in early. The second thing is the age of retirement. And again, under CSRS, I jokingly say sometimes retirement planning, it can be almost as simple as, can you count to 42? With FERS, you got a few different moving parts, and you do not want to miss the importance of age 62. Age 62, with 20 years, the whole pension goes up by 10%. Ed Zerndorfer wrote a great article, and we covered it in our sister podcast, the Fed Life podcast, on why the special retirement supplement is no substitute for the enhanced annuity. So folks, please, 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 if you've got 60 circled on the calendar, move that to 62. Okay, because with 20 years, you're going to get that 1.1% multiplier. Plus, you'll start getting COLAs right away. You go down to MRA at 57, you could go 5 years without COLAs. 5 years ago, I said that to people, they laughed at me. Okay, now we've seen inflation come back. So imagine if the last 3 years were part of your first 5 years with no COLAs. You wouldn't be very happy. The other thing to keep in mind, if you are working past your RMD age, and we have seen that more and more, but now that RMD ages have slid from 70.5 to 73, and now we'll be heading to 75. We might not see it as much, but keep in mind, if you are working, you are not required to take an RMD from your TSP. Now, if you are past that age, you want to be careful about when you retire, because you could be in a situation where you have to get 2 RMDs in a single year. So hit our article. I won't dig into those details right now. Go ahead and hit our article for that one. Another thing to keep in mind is that you can carry over 240 hours of annual leave if you're a non-SES employee. And you can also accumulate another 208 hours in that year. So 448 is the amount that you could be compensated for when you go out. Important to remember, though, got to be taxed on it. So make sure when you're doing the mental math, as far as, here's what I'm going to get from my annual leave payout, make sure you factor in your tax rates on that. Next thing, interim pension payments. When you retire, the first payment you receive is not going to be your finalized payment. And they're going to be roughly 60 to 70% of what your pension should be. And then your retirement package can take anywhere from 1 to 6 months to come through. You will not have all of the deductions taken from the interim pension. So it's going to feel a little bit closer. And don't worry, Uncle's going to be keeping track of whatever he didn't deduct from your interim pension. And he's also going to be keeping track of the 30% that he's not paying you. And he's going to true those up once the final adjudication is concerned. Do not plan on that being tens of thousands of dollars. It's not going to be a big number. Okay. And the biggest thing of all, understand how all of the things work, how they fit together. For example, one thing that's going to change for most people is they're used to paying their FEHB pre-tax.
Mm-hmm.
You retire, it's going to come out after tax. Okay. That is something you're going to feel a little bit. TSP, can't stress it enough. You've got to have a strategy while you're building it up, and you've got to have a strategy while you're drawing it down. And TSP itself is not a strategy. It's just not. Okay. It is not a one-size-fits-all product that's going to take care of everything for you. It is not. You are going to have the right mix of asset classes across those 5 core funds to make sure that you are getting the growth you need to offset inflation. Because, Katelyn, as we just talked about, FEHB could jump a lot more than you expect, TSP is going to be one of your aces in the hole for that. And also, don't forget your FEGLI, because it really breaks my heart, Katelyn. You know this, when we run across somebody who's already retired and they drop their FEGLI basic because they didn't know they could take a 75% reduction and get 25% for free for the rest of their lives. So, folks, take a moment, hit our article. If you want more of a one-on-one approach, you can come to Ask STWS at stwserve.com, request a one-on-one consultation. We'll talk this through with you, but it's important that you have a plan, and it's important that you understand how all the pieces go together. So, Katelyn, tell us about FEHB.
Yeah. So we kind of talked about the pie at large. I want to kind of focus in on one slice today. Many of you who are avid readers of the blog may recall that back in fall, we actually started a series breaking down OPM's FEHB handbook. Now, incredibly dense document. If you've ever looked at the FEHB handbook, it's one of those that you take a look at it and you're like, maybe I'll come back to that in a little while. It can take a while to get
I'll read
through.
Atlas Shrugged instead.
Yeah, yes, it is very much kind of on tier with that. But we are continuing that series today, kind of looking in at eligibility for FEHB. So we're going to look at a subsection of employees that are almost definitely not eligible. That almost, there is a caveat because there are always kind of one-off situations. There are always kind of weird, unique quirks in the rules, but almost all of the time, the following employees are not eligible for FEHB. Those would be feds that are employed by the Tennessee Valley Authority, employees technically employed by a corporation that is supervised by the Farm Credit Administration, the FCA, patient employees in government hospitals or homes. They're not going to be covered by FEHB. And then federal contractors. Most likely these are not eligible, but there are always kind of eccentricities. So those are the folks who are not eligible. And then we come to one of my favorite groups, the following type of employees. I like to call them the if crew. So these employees might be eligible depending on certain exceptions. So employees of a county committee could be eligible if that committee was established under Section 8B of the Soil Conservation and Domestic Allotment Act.
Oh.
U.S. commissioners could be eligible if subject to civil service retirement or federal employee retirement laws. Presidential appointees if their term doesn't expire. Temporary employees if they've received a provisional appointment or have completed at least 1 year of continuous employment. DC government employees could be eligible if first employed before October 1st, 1987. And this one has a special caveat. This one is an if and an or. So if they're first employed before October 1, 1987, or if you're employed at St. Elizabeth's Hospital. And there are also some exceptions built in for some criminal justice positions as well that kind of tie in with those DC government employees. So lots of caveats there. Now, student employees under the Pathways program are eligible even if they're in a temporary position that is less than 1 year of continuous employment. And then lastly, designated staff of Congress members, as long as they have worked 130 hours per month for at least 90 days, that's their if. So they kind of have that 130 hours per month for at least 90 days requirement. Now, every other federal employee that's not mentioned as part of the almost definitely not and the if crew should be good to go for FEHB coverage, except if their employing agency or OPM has decided that their position in particular is excluded either by law or some other government regulation that is factoring in there. And then, of course, we would have to mention, because we've covered this several times on the podcast, but we definitely want to mention that starting in 2025, USPS employees and retirees are going to not be under FEHB. They're in a new Public Service Health Benefits Program, PSHB. Gotcha. So they're in a different bowl of alphabet soup, if you will.
Whew. That's a lot of factors, Katelyn.
Yes. Yeah. So I definitely recommend, if FEHB eligibility, if you are somebody who is in that if crew, or if you're not sure where you stand with FEHB, definitely hit our website. There's a lot of information there. The series Breaking Down the FEHB Handbook covers a lot. We did a general overview. We talked about legal responsibilities. We talked about FEHB premiums, premium conversion, withholding contributions. As Dan was saying, you're paying pre-tax premiums while you're still working. That changes when you do retire. We also looked at the types of health plans that they have available, and we kind of looked at how FEHB coordinates with other health insurance. So definitely, if FEHB is something you're curious about, check out the website, check out the FEHB Handbook series. We also have an FEHB webinar that also covers Medicare if that's something that you're curious about. So definitely check out those resources for more info there.
Absolutely. Well, I think that's all the time we have today, folks. But we will be back next week, bringing the latest updates you need to make informed decisions about your career and financial well-being as a Fed.
Absolutely. And so that you don't miss next week's episode, be sure to subscribe to our podcast on our YouTube channel so that you never miss an episode. And please do remember to share it with your friends and colleagues. We are also on Spotify. If you are kind of a play and go type person, then you can find us there as well.
Absolutely. And for more information on the topics covered in today's show and more, check out our blog at blog.stwserve.com. Subscribe to our newsletter, The Weekly Serving, so you get all the latest news for Feds, bam, delivered straight to your inbox every single week. You won't miss a thing.
And remember those webinars that I mentioned earlier. For those who want to dive even deeper into learning about your federal benefits and financial planning for Feds, I highly encourage you to join us for one of those complimentary webinars. They are totally free of charge. They are also free of obligation. We've got a great TSP planning webinar coming up on April 11th. From 1 p.m. to 4 p.m. So that afternoon, if you want to block off some time with us. We also have a financial planning for Feds webinar coming up on April 12th from 11 a.m. to 2 p.m. If you've never joined us for a webinar, the financial planning for Feds webinar is a really good one to start with because it's that overview of the whole pie. And then from there, you can really kind of define which slices, which pieces of your overall benefits plan you want to dig into and learn.
Eat the whole pie, Katelyn. We got to eat the whole pie.
Oh, yeah. Eventually eat the whole pie.
Absolutely.
It's addictive like pie, our webinar.
Absolutely.
If you prefer a one-on-one approach, of course, if you're, looking for somebody to kind of partner with you on a deeper level and kind of really look at your individual retirement planning, your benefits package, your investment strategy, all of that, you can feel free to reach out to our team anytime for a financial planning consultation at askstws@stwserve.com.
Absolutely. So, folks, thanks for listening to Fed15. Remember, this is the one place where you'll never get in trouble for eating the whole pie. So, by all means. And so, on that note, let's say goodbye. I am Dan Sipe.
And I'm Katelyn Murray.
And we will see you next week.